Well, welcome back once again to Straight Up Bible Teaching. We're continuing our series on coping mechanisms, which are our substitute for practicing real biblical forgiveness. Coping mechanisms there's a vast array of them, as you are beginning to see. And we tend to go to them very naturally, because, as I've said before, this is what we learn to do when we're not practicing forgiveness. We learn it growing up, and it becomes second nature to us. So we've already covered a number of them. We have quite a ways to go still, and so I want to get right into it here again today. And the first one that I want to talk about is excusing sin, excusing it. What do we mean by that? Well, sometimes if you have ever gone to a counselor for an emotional issue of any kind, one of the things that they might try to help you do is to understand why something happened. You know, there was a traumatic incident that happened in your life. Somebody did something that really hurt you, and they try to help you walk through this understanding of why the person did what they did. As though, if you can understand it, that makes it okay. No, it doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it right. Just because you can understand why somebody did something doesn't make it right, doesn't provide an excuse, doesn't say, well, I guess they had a reason to, so we can't hold it against them. No, that is not right. Understand, whenever sin happens, regardless of what the sin is, excuses don't cut it. All right? We see this sometimes in justice cases that go before the courts, where crimes have been committed. Maybe somebody's been killed, and the guilty person has been caught, they've been charged, and they're on trial. And everybody is trying to figure out, why did they do it? You know, we see this a lot in the media, especially. Whenever there's say a mass shooting or something like that these days, or recently there was a couple of ladies that drove an entire family off a cliff and killed everybody. Why? Okay, everybody wants to know, why did they do it? Why did they do it? Doesn't really make a whole lot of difference why they did it. They did it on purpose. We know that. And understanding why isn't going to bring anybody back. It isn't going to make anything right. And that's what we have to understand. Excusing sin because you understand why somebody did it doesn't make what they did right. So we don't want to excuse any sin. We need to understand that sin is incredibly damaging, and it will always be destructive. Always. And we never want to minimize it like we talked about last time, and we don't want to excuse it, regardless of the reason why somebody did something. Okay? Because people can always give you a reason as to why they did something. That doesn't make it right. Okay? So we want to learn to practice righteousness in our lives, so that even when we look at ourselves, we aren't even making excuses for ourselves that says, well, yeah, I did that but I had a good reason to. No, you don't. No, you don't. Let me tell you, if you don't learn anything else through all of this, I want you to learn one thing. There's never an excuse for your sin. And sin is always a choice. You never just stumble into it. Okay? Occasionally you may do something ignorantly because you didn't know it was a sin, but that's not the same thing. What we're talking about here is you knowingly sinning. There's never an excuse for that. So don't make excuses for yourself. Don't make allowances for it. You have the Holy Spirit inside of you. If you are a born-again believer, follower of Jesus Christ, you have the Holy Spirit. And don't ever tell me that the Holy Spirit inside of you isn't more powerful than your flesh or than the devil and the world that's outside. So don't give in. You stand strong, you stay firm, and you refuse to sin, regardless of what it costs you. All right? Okay. The next one is another one that is very well known, and this is one that we see people teaching their children this one deliberately. We call it justify the sin. And what do I mean by we teach them this one deliberately? Well, you may have been in a situation where you have siblings, all right? Or maybe you have children. And maybe you're driving down the road, and as you're driving down the road, the kids are in the back seat and they're squabbling back and forth. And then all of a sudden, you hear some things going on, and suddenly one or both of them are crying. And you go, what happened? Well, they hit one another, and so now you're trying to figure out what exactly happened, and you might hear something like, well, he hit me first, or she pulled my hair, or, who knows what it was. Okay, and so what they are saying is, because that person sinned, I had justification for sinning against them, and so I hit them. Okay, so that's one way of justifying it. Another one is, well, I had some good intentions, because the end justifies the means. No, that's not right either. And so sometimes we see this happening where maybe with little kids in particular, one of them might be a biter, and they they're not very old, but they bite other kids, and sometimes a parent may tell the one who has been bitten, well, bite them back. Okay? Because they're saying, hey, give them a taste of their own medicine. But if you understand what is going on there, what you're doing is you're teaching the children to justify doing wrong to another person. Okay? So that if somebody hurts you, you have a right to hurt them back. That is not God's way. God tells us to never return evil for evil. Never. So we don't want to enter into these evil for evil relationships because we think we have justification for doing what we do. All right? Understand, this is not just a little family issue. This is a major cause of trouble in this world. You go to the Middle East in particular. This is the underlying reason why there is a battle continually between the Jewish nation of Israel and the nations around them, particularly the so-called Palestinian people and others. They're always in this squabble, and they're fighting. And if you ever hear these people talk, they'll talk about things that happened hundreds of years ago as justification for what they're doing today. That's ridiculous. Okay? That's ridiculous. But understand that what you see going on there in the Middle East is a family squabble that started some 4,000 years ago with Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac, when Abraham sent Ishmael away. And it started this squabble between Ishmael and the sons of Ishmael and Isaac and his sons and their descendants. And that squabble has never stopped. Never stopped. Because neither side has ever practiced biblical forgiveness. That's why you see the things happening that are happening over there now. So, I want you to understand, this is an important coping mechanism to understand. We don't want to go here. We don't want to excuse sin, and we don't want to justify it either. Okay? All right, next time we'll get into some more coping mechanisms. And hopefully these are helping you identify what yours are so that you can begin to stop resorting to those coping mechanisms and actually begin to practice forgiveness God's way. Until next time, this is Pastor Ken. Have a great day.